Today I'm going to be stringing some potato pearls and shells, and I'm going to show you how it's done. I'm using a number 2 natural silk beading cord, and most of these come with the needle attached, and there's the little needle right there. This is a really small hole on this particular type of pearl. This is a potato pearl. So I'm going to remove this packaging, or remove this cord from the package. I like these little grooves here that hold this in place. So now I am going to take this apart, removing the needle. Now that I've removed the thread from the card, I'm just going to tug on it a little bit to sort of straighten it out. Because once you start stringing the pearls, you don't want this thread to knot up, because if it knots up, then you're going to have to cut it and start stringing all over again. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to pull this, and don't pull it too hard because it's silk thread. It's very durable and it could cut your hand. So just kind of gently tug to straighten it out. What I've done is I've actually run my thread through all of the pearls and shells. I'm going to be using a 2-strand method. It's a Japanese method of stringing pearls. On this end, I didn't use a bead stopper. I just used a paper clip. But on this end, I've got about 6 inches of the bead cord. And then the other end is where you really want to have the largest amount of cord. It appears that the video cut off before I finished, but what I was saying is you want to have the larger amount of thread on the end where the needle is, because that's where you're going to start knotting and threading from. I'm just straightening out the needle, and then I'm going to run the French wire through there. I'm just going to run this French wire down the thread to where I want it. Okay, so now I'm going to slide this first bead down that I have on this, let's just call it a stationary strand. And I'm going to put this through. I'm going to run this needle right back through here in the same, through the same hole. See if I can get that going there. Okay. And I'm going to pull the thread through, being careful not to get it knotted. So I'm just going to guide it with my fingers. And okay, I want to get that a little bit closer, and what you're going to see here is, as I'm pulling the French, let's see if you can see this, move it back a little bit so you get a better look. As I am pulling this down, I'll put it here so you can see it. As I'm pulling that down, see how that French wire is just gonna curl? And look, I'm gonna leave a nice finish for this clasp. See that? And that's, the French wire actually protects the thread, and it gives it a nice finish to your clasp where you're attaching it to your beads. Okay, this is where the fun begins. Now I'm going to slide this, before I slide the second bead down, I am going to put a knot here. So what I'm doing is I'm holding these 2 pieces of cord together. Both these lines are held together. Then I'm going to take my needle and I'm actually going to form a loop. I'm going to run the needle through the loop, and then I am just going to pull all this thread. And if you remember at the beginning of this video, I told you you're going to keep the majority of the thread on the end where the needle is, because you're going to need that as you're knotting or placing the knots between each one of these beads. Okay, so you see I am now, you got to keep it, I'm going to pull it, and look, the knot goes right down in there in between. So I'm going to do one more, and then I'm not going to show you all of these. I'll just fast forward to the end. The next bead I'm going to slide down, and then I am going to run this through the hole, same direction, and you'll have to straighten this needle out several times, many times even, as you are stringing and knotting these pearls. So you just want to make sure that you keep your thread straight. You don't want it to knot up on you, because if it knots up on you, you're going to have to do this whole process all over again, and you will use up a lot of thread. Trust me, I know. So I am pulling this down. So look, and the knot in between is going to protect these pearls from scratching each other. So once again, I'm going to take this thread, I'm going to hold these two strings together, and then I'm going to make a loop where the thread on the needle is going to go in between the loop. I'm going to pull that down, holding it with my fingers so that it does not knot up. Getting closer, and you want to get that knot really, really close. Okay. And I'm going to pull it down, 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 down. There. So you've got two really gorgeous looking pearls there. And the knot, you're not really going to be able to see the knot. If you want your knots to show, just do a double knot and you'll be able to see that, because sometimes people like to knot them where they see the knot in between each. But this method is a Japanese method, and it's so much easier to string pearls using this method as opposed to the other method where you use a single strand of cord and maybe a tweezer or something to get the knot close. I've tried them both, and I really like this one better. So I'm going to continue stringing these together, and I'll be back. For these last two beads, I'm going to do something a little bit different. As you can see, this was the thread that I had running through my stationary thread, I like to call it. So I'm not using that anymore. I've tied off this last bead here, the third bead from the end, with that. So I'm not going to use that anymore. And these two beads are loose, and they are on my stringing strand, which has the needle attached to it. I've actually threaded the French wire onto this cord that has the needle attached, and I ran it through the other end of my clasp. I like to just keep the clasp together. Some people may just take them apart because I like to see how that's going to look when I pull it. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to run this needle through the first bead, I threaded this through the first bead, and I'm going to hold this clasp in place as I pull this down because the threads need to stay tight. And you'll see how this is going to come around. And you'll see the French wire there. Now what I'm going to do is just make a loop, a single loop. I'm not using the other thread. I'm going to go under the pearl, in between, and I'm going to tie a knot. Now pull this knot real tight. You can't see it, but my objective is to keep these two beads really close together. So I am going to hold it. It looks a little messy, but I'm going to hold these two beads in place. I'm going to hold these beads in place, and I'm going to pull this cord, keeping my finger in there as a guide, keeping it really, really tight. And what I think I'm going to do here, because I want them to be tight, I'm going to take this paper clip and open it up and put it in this loop. That way I can pull it really tight. Because these two have to stay really, really tight. Keep that nice and tight. And then all I'm going to do is run my needle through this second bead and tighten it up. I knotted those last two pearls together, and here's the finished product. Okay, there you have it. I actually ran my needle through that second bead, and what I decided to do, since I still had this stationary cord running, I decided to go back and attach this to the second one and knot it like I did with the others. And the final step is, and I'm not going to cut these yet, I'm going to take this GS Hypo Cement and I am going to drop a drop in between this bead and this bead. I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm going to cut this cord, and that'll be it. I hope you enjoyed watching. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel.